Thank you, Hedley, and I think we can segue fairly well into what's going on in the junior space with regards to the big companies. I think the big companies are back in town and they're starting to back the juniors with that have got the good quality projects, and that's exactly what I'm going to be telling you about today, is that we've now hooked a big company, Rio Tinto, to help invest in one of our major projects, which is our Ugandan project. So this slide's about the only slide you really need to remember about my talk today, and there's three things you need to remember: three key commodities, 2 belt scale land positions, and 1 we're the first mover, explorer, discoverer, and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail for you. So the 3 key commodities that we are exploring for are nickel, copper and gold. Nickel copper in Uganda and copper gold in the North Paterson province in northwest WA. And we have 2 belt scale land positions. That means a really a big position, more than 1,000 square kilometres in the Paterson province and more than 3,000 square kilometres in Uganda. And that allows us to really have a commanding position. If there's a discovery made by us or by anybody else, we've really got some leverage in that area, and it's a good chunk of land to really screen and work. Lots of opportunities within that. Being the first mover, the reason why that's important is you've heard the phrase, the early bird gets the worm. Often in these terrains, if you're the first person to be there, you're going to make that first big tier 1 discovery. So that's our mission and our DNA, so to speak. So we just look in a little bit more detail. A first mover in underexplored frontier mineral provinces. We've got 2 high quality exploration projects, a Ugandan nickel copper sulfide discovery in northern Uganda, and our emerging copper gold discovery in the Paterson province. And if you invest your money into Sipa resources, you will get a very high percentage of that money invested in the ground. We are very technically driven. I'm trying to keep this presentation very simple and not go down a rabbit hole of complex geological concepts, and try to keep it just simple so that you can understand we know what we're doing, and even though it's greenfields exploration, we are very confident that we are going to be performing way better than average on the money that we're putting into the ground. So a legacy of our discovery history is that we've got quite a large portfolio of royalties. We've discovered all of these projects ourselves over our long period of being listed on the ASX, and all those discoveries now are held with mid-tiers or other companies that are trying to get those projects into production. So we've got a royalty on the old Panorama Sulphur Springs project, which is now with VentureX. They're doing a DFS on that at the moment, and our royalty is up to 3.7 million on the Sulphur Springs project, and we've got a 40% royalty on the rest of the project, uncapped. The Ashburton Gold project, which is now with Northern Star, there's 1.7 million ounces on the books there. We've got a royalty on that. We sold that to Northern Star, having mined it from 1999 to 2004. We had a project in the early to mid-2000s called Enigma, and that was sold to Samphire in 2015, and we have a royalty on that. So all little pieces of upside that could come into play going forwards. Looking at the corporate side of things, we've got a bit over 1 billion shares on issue, and at the end of March, cash at 1.5. We've just recently raised an extra $1 million, which will allow us now to work on our Paterson project in northwest WA. So we're fully funded for all the work we're going to do going forwards. The real highlight for us this year is being able to announce this landmark farm-in and joint venture agreement with Rio Tinto. It really validates our exploration strategy of new frontiers, big belts, and being a first mover. And this deal we announced on the 14th of May, which is only a couple of weeks ago, and it's a staged option to earn up to 75% and spending US, it's a US dollar deal, $57 million of earn into the ground, and $2 million cash. If you want to know any more about that deal in detail, there's a whole announcement of that the 14th of May. It's a staged deal, 3 components. It's quite complicated, but the main things you need to take away from it is the quantum, which is the US 57 million or 75 million cash, the extra cash payments of 2 million, that's 0.25 and 1 million, 1.5 million over that period of time. And importantly, we're going to be managing the exploration for the next 18 months. So we will be able to control the news flow to a greater extent than what we would be if we were non-managers of that joint venture. So we're very excited about that development. So if we tell you a little bit about the project in Uganda, that orange dot on there is actually 3,000 square kilometres in northern Uganda. It's on the margin of the Congo supercraton. And in 2015, we made a nickel copper sulfide discovery at a project called Akela Congo. We've drilled about 5,000 metres there, mainly diamond drilling, and that project or that discovery is still open down plunge. We've tried quite a lot of different geophysical techniques, and we really think now that we've worked out how to explore in this belt. In the meantime, while we've been trying to attract a major to really get this thing funded, we've defined another 14 prospective mafic, ultramafic intrusions, which also could be nickel sulfide mineralised. So we've handed this project to Rio on a plate. I wouldn't say handed because they're going to be spending $75 million, but it's exactly the sort of project that a major loves to have, a walk-up drill target or a sort of quasi-deposit, and also belt scale potential. So what does Akela Congo look like? This is what us geologists call a leapfrog model. Leapfrog is a geological modelling package, and the red amoeba or blob is essentially 400 metre strike length of disseminated nickel sulfide, and that's at about a 0.25 cutoff and 0.1% copper with a little bit of cobalt in there. What we're really looking for in a system like this, and that's quite low grade, is these things have high grade massive sulfides associated with them, and that's the yellow area that we've defined so far. And those areas at the moment have got about 10 metres thick of massive sulfide. We want to find essentially where that massive sulfide pools as you go down plunge. So that was the challenge that we had to try to do as a junior, was to step out down plunge and find that massive sulfide. The challenge was that we could only ever raise funds for 1 or 2 drill holes, and if we didn't come in with the goods, then we'd be killing the project, and we knew that project really needed some serious funding to make those breakthroughs. If we have a look at the next, have to press it really hard. Yes, hooray! So this is probably the most technical or complicated slide that I've got, and this compares our ground holding in Uganda with the same scale ground holding in the Fraser Range. I think you'll remember a few years ago there was an absolute plethora of junior exploration companies putting money into nickel exploration in the Fraser Range after Sirius made their Nova nickel discovery. Our Ugandan project has the same geological characteristics. It's on the margin of the Congo supercraton in Central Africa. The Nova discovery is on the margin of the Yilgarn craton, geologically identical settings. Our project there, you can see the blue is our land holding. There's a star up there for where Akela Congo is, and all the other blobs on there are where we've identified other nickel anomalous soils and also intrusions. So those are the areas that we're going to be concentrating on with Rio to see if we can prove up some other discoveries and also test further the Akela Congo discovery. If you look at the other side there, there's very little other actual intrusions even identified in the rest of the Fraser Range. There's a few companies that have got some now, but it's taken hundreds of millions of dollars and really not a lot of good results that have come out of that area. So we think we're in the box seat to make multiple discoveries in our project. Switching gear now to Australia, where our Patterson project is in northwest WA. We've got the gold and copper are the commodities that we're looking for there. And again, we've got a key position in an emerging gold and copper mineralised belt. Telfer down the South Patterson is a 25 million ounce world-class gold deposit. And we're about 100 kilometres northwest of Telfer in the same geological belt. I'll just run you through what's been going on in the Patterson North in the last few years. We did a deal with Ming in 2016, and we were right up the northern end of the Patterson there, and we had no other competition. We had Antipa and Rio to the south and nobody else around us at all. And we're really using a lot of technology, help from the CSIRO and the WA government assisted us with co-funding our drilling. So we got a lot of help to do the initial work when we started in 2016. 2017, we saw Rio we've gone straight to 2008. Oh, no, we haven't. We saw Rio coming in there to our west. That's the area in purple. So we thought, okay, well, they're doing something with Antipa and the JV, but now they're pegging ground in their own right. What are they up to? So yeah, we're pretty interested in what they're up to, but we couldn't find out anything about what they're up to really. And then fast forward to 2018, and you can see that Rio's pegged a massive big area out to the west of us. And funnily enough, when we saw that, we thought we'd have another look at the tenement map and discovered that FMG has pegged up to the north of us as well. They're the orange area. So this is the latest new pegging address. And some of those tenements are granted, some of them are not. But this is going to be a pretty interesting field season up there with a lot of people putting a lot of money into the ground, because you can't just peg ground and sit on it. You've actually got to spend money and explore it. So we've just raised $1 million to go back up there and complete our field program for the year. So we're pretty excited about what our neighbours are going to be doing as well. So this is our third year in the Patterson, and we really believe that we're starting to understand how to explore there and really get onto some pretty interesting targets. So if you have a look at the left side there, this is the broad regional magnetic data, and that's sort of where we started looking at that. Had a couple of copper sniffs that we wanted to follow up, and so this first year we really spent looking at the regional data sets and doing some broad reconnaissance drilling. In the second year, after having confirmed that, we went through and had a look at what sort of targets were really going to be there geologically. So we tried to put together a diagram of the deposit style, and we put a lot of work into working out what different techniques would work, geophysical techniques, quantitative petrology, which is where the CSIRO came in. So we put a lot of work into researching what sort of techniques were going to give us some breakthroughs up there in the northern Patterson where no one else had worked before. So we did some diamond drilling, and we proved that we've got a broad low-grade copper system, a lot of alteration, a lot of veining, and sulfides, and magnetic sulfides in particular, are showing up, and we think we can target them out of the mag data that we've already got over our project. So this year, it's very specific targeting that we're doing over a number of projects. We've got our obelisk project, which we drilled last year, which we think we haven't drilled the best part of yet, which we're planning to do this year. We've got a nickel target, which came out of the open file data, called Andromeda. That's a priority target for us this field season, and a couple of other targets. All the projects or the anomalies are named after old constellations, but they have to be able to be spelled and not too long. So hopefully that's the trend, and that's why we're calling these things what we are. So obelisk was a name that already existed. Andromeda is the next cab off the rank. Just a bit more detail on obelisk. The blue box is where we're going to be drilling, which is about 250 metres to the northwest of where we've already drilled. That's where the peak of the IP and the peak of the mag shows up. The drilling we did to the south last year was essentially where resistivity and IP chargeability coincided. So that just shows those regional targets in a little bit more detail. And our plan forward there is in the Patterson. We'll be drilling hopefully in June to test these targets, a little bit of ground geophysics just to help with the targeting. And we've got some co-funded drilling grants from the WA government, up to about 300,000 there. In Uganda, we're doing some more geochemistry on those nickel targets that we've identified, and gravity to prove up the drill targets. And the drilling in Uganda hopefully will be either end of the third quarter or early fourth quarter in 2018. So just to remind you, again, there's only 3 things you need to remember about Sipa. 3 key commodities: nickel, copper, gold, 2 very large belt scale land positions, 1 which is fully funded by Rio, and we are a first mover explorer discoverer. So that's how we're going to make Australia great again, by finding new tier 1 deposits. Thank you.